Welcome to Torah Conversations, a show where we discuss the weekly Torah portion read in synagogues all over the world from a messianic and Christian perspective, for all believers, Jew and Gentile, to connect with God's heart for Israel. This week, we're going to be discussing the portion of Toldot from Genesis 25:19 to 28:9. So if you have a Bible, we want to invite you to open it up and read it with us. I pray that the Holy Spirit will touch your heart and change your life. Hey guys, welcome to this week's episode of Torah Conversations, where we discuss the weekly Torah portion read in synagogues all over the world from a messianic and Christian perspective, for all believers, Jew and Gentile, to connect with God's heart for Israel. You can listen to this podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and all major platforms. Visit our ministry website, tilzionsings.com, and connect with us on Instagram and YouTube at tilzionsings. Well, it's been a while since I've done a solo episode, and the last couple of weeks I've been off for a couple of weeks because I've been a little bit ill, and Chaim Melspin, our regular guest, has been away. I was away in London for a conference, and it was amazing. It was with my friend David Harris, Kingdom Encounter Ministries. Brilliant guy. The presence of God was just so strong, so tangible, and it was such a hunger, just going after the Lord, and it was very special, and the Lord just really encountered me. So I was busking in that, and when I came back 2 Sundays ago, they put me on antibiotics. So I've taken a bit of time off, but last week's episode was up on time because it was recorded early. But this time I thought, let's just do a solo episode, because this is also one of my favorite portions of the entire Torah. I mean, I like every portion, but this is one of my favorite, and it's very special, and it's a very challenging portion. It's often misunderstood, the character of Jacob, the person of Jacob, who is traditionally interpreted as a deceiver. If you've been in the church, you probably heard that Jacob, the name Jacob, means deceiver. And it's a challenging portion because how can a deceiver deceive the birthright or deceive the blessing, obtain this blessing through deceit, and still be blessed by God, affirmed by God? And if you read the prophetic books, God is actually adamant about that. Jacob I have loved, Esau I have hated in Malachi 1, I think. And it's a strong word. So the question is, how can Jacob deceive his father and get the blessing and still be blessed by the Lord? And that's the challenging part. But if we actually get into the portion, we see a different narrative, a different story entirely. So this is why I also thought this is a brilliant opportunity to take this portion alone. And so let's have a look. The portion is called Toldot, or generations in English, and it's from Genesis 25:19 to 28:9. It's 3 chapters, a little bit more than 3 chapters, and it talks about the birth of Jacob and Esau, and what the Lord showed Rebecca about the 2 nations contending with each other, and then famine in the land, and Isaac going to Gerar to stay with Avimelech, and then the Lord confirming his covenant, and then we have Jacob deceiving his blessing from Esau, and it ends with Esau wanting to kill Jacob. Very, very significant, interesting portion. But this portion is very significant, not just pertaining the 2 people, the 2 brothers, because in the first part of the portion, when Rivka was pregnant, it says the children, in verse 22, the children struggled together within her. And she said, if this is so, why then am I this way? And she inquired of the Lord, and the Lord said, 2 nations are in your womb, and 2 peoples, not 2 brothers, 2 peoples will be separated from your body, and one people shall be stronger than the other, and the older shall serve the younger. So the immediate application, the implication of this prophecy, this prophetic word the Lord gave Rivkah, is about 2 nations. It's not primarily about the 2 brothers, the relationship of 2 brothers, even though it starts out with that. So understanding this portion actually helps us understand the relationship between Israel and the nation of Edom, which is modern-day Jordan. And actually, in a way, it could actually give us a perspective on the Israeli-Palestinian conflict as well, because the Palestinian people in the West Bank, in Judea and Samaria, are actually the same people as Jordan, really, if you look through the history. Now, it's not the only perspective, but it adds a perspective because this contention between the 2 brothers carries on as Esau becomes this nation of Edom and Jacob becomes Israel. So let's look at it. First part of the portion, chapter 25, 19 through 26. The Lord speaks to Rebekah. Let's read it again. 2 nations are in your womb, and 2 peoples will be separated from your body, and one people shall be stronger than the other, and the older shall serve the younger. So, as we mentioned earlier, this is about 2 nations. And it says, when her days to be delivered were fulfilled, behold, there were twins in her womb. Now the first came forth red all over like a hairy garment, and they named him Esau. Afterwards, his brother came forth with his hand holding on to Esau's heel. So his name was called Jacob. And the first thing we notice here, Jacob does not mean deceiver. It does not. Now, you might be thinking later on, Esau accuses Jacob, it says to Isaac, isn't he rightly named Jacob because he deceived me of my birthright and deceived me of my blessing? So people say Jacob means deceiver, but actually, we're going to get there in a minute. But here, it's clear. Jacob, Yaakov, means grabbing by the heel. The Hebrew word for heel is ekev, and Jacob is Yaakov. It's the same root word, ayin, kaf, and bet. Now, what's also apparent is that it seems that God has determined that Jacob would inherit the birthright from the very beginning, because God revealed this to Rebekah. But traditionally, the birthright is supposed to be given to the firstborn, and Esau is clearly the firstborn. So why would God give that to Jacob, to Yaakov? Now, the Midrash gives this analogy. I mean, it's this rabbinic tradition that Jacob was actually conceived first. Now, we don't have proof of that, but that's the idea. So the Midrash says, it gives this analogy of a tube. If you have a tube and you put 2 balls in, you put one and then you put another one. The one that goes in last would come out first. The one that goes in first would come out last if you were to tip them out. So the idea is that even though Esau was born first, Jacob was in fact conceived first. But also the picture of grabbing by the heel is an interesting one, because when you grab someone by the heel, your hands are above your head and you're grabbing them by the heel. So when was the first time you see this picture of a picture that involves a head and a heel? It was Genesis 3, right? Genesis 3:15. The seed of the woman would crush the head of the serpent, and the Lord said to the serpent, though you have injured his heel, he will crush your head. So this is, obviously the seed is about the Messiah, and the entire line of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and Israel being birthed is about bringing forth the Messiah to crush the head of the serpent. Now here, it's that picture again. Jacob grabbing Esau by the heel. Jacob was not trying to stop Esau from being born first, but rather he was trying to protect his own head, because the Lord said to the enemy, the seed of the woman would crush my head. So if I can somehow manage to crush the head of Yaakov, the head of Jacob, whom God has said to be blessed, then this nation would not be birthed. So it's actually an attempt to protect his own head. Now, verse 27, when the boys grew up, Esau became a skillful hunter, a man of the field. But Jacob was a peaceful man living in tents. Now, Isaac loved Esau because he had a taste for game, but Rebekah loved Jacob. Why did Rebekah love Jacob? Because of the word that the Lord gave Rebekah. She knew the destiny of Jacob. That's why she favored Jacob more. But also we see in the character of Esau, when he came back from hunting and he saw Jacob cooking up this stew, and he wanted some, so he sold his birthright for a bowl of stew. So what does this say about Esau's character? He doesn't care about anything that's holy. He doesn't care about the birthright. He sold it for instant gratification. He cared more about his own pleasure and satisfaction than things of the Lord, the responsibility of the firstborn. So when Jacob had cooked stew, and says Esau came in from the field and he was famished, and Esau said to Jacob, please let me have a swallow of that red stuff here, for I am famished. Therefore his name was called Edom. Now the word red is Adom, and then Edom is Edom. It's a word play. So Edom was the nickname of Jacob. But it's also interesting that the word Adom, red, is actually spelled with the exact same letters as the word for Adam. It's just the vowels that are different. But the Hebrew language doesn't have vowels. It's just consonants. So Edom or Adom also speaks of man's fallen nature, this human nature, the sinful nature, selfish nature of man. So Jacob said, first sell me your birthright. And Esau said, behold, I'm about to die. So of what use then is the birthright to me? And Jacob said, first swear to me. So he swore, and he sold his birthright for a bowl of stew. Now, chapter 26 is a bit of a deja vu chapter, because there's a famine in the land just like it happened in Abraham's days. And Isaac went to Avimelech, and the Lord said, don't go down to Egypt. Stay in the land I will show you, and I will bless you. I will bless your descendants. I will give you the land. And he basically just repeats this, the same promise he gave to Abraham. Verse 3, I will give all these lands, and I will establish the oath which I swore to your father Abraham. I will multiply your descendants as the stars of heaven, and will give your descendants all these lands, and by your descendants all the nations of the earth shall be blessed, because Abraham obeyed me and kept my charge, my commandments, my statutes. So there's a lesson here. When there's a famine, when there's challenges, and you want to go to the place where you can find solutions, but God says, actually, if you obey me, I will bless you. So there's a lesson about trusting in God here. But trusting in God doesn't mean there's no fear, right? So the next thing that happens, Isaac did the exact same thing as his father, telling people that his wife is his sister and almost getting them in trouble. And Avimelech, I can just imagine how Avimelech was feeling at that time, because I believe it's actually the same Avimelech as the one who made covenant with Abraham, because Avimelech is just the generic term for the king of the Philistines at that time, just like Pharaoh in Egypt, this Avimelech. But I believe it's the same Avimelech. I can just imagine what Avimelech must have been feeling, right? Your father did the same thing and almost got us in trouble, and now you're doing it. So he confronts it. But Isaac did that out of fear, but the Lord was with him. And Avimelech charged all the people, saying, he who touches this man or his wife shall surely be put to death. And then Isaac sowed in the land, verse 12, Isaac sowed in the land and reaped in the same year 100-fold. Now that's blessing. When he obeyed the Lord, he was blessed. But blessings came with jealousy from the Philistines, and they clogged the wells that his father Abraham dug. And there's a spiritual lesson here as well. When you are blessed, people will be jealous towards you, but don't take that on, because when you take it on, that jealousy is going to clog the wells, the spiritual wells inside us. Don't take it on. But the good news is we can always redig it. So Isaac redug the wells and gave them the same names which his father had given them. And then the Philistines weren't happy, and they disputed and said, the water's ours, it's not yours. And they dug a couple of other wells. And by the way, I just want to point out, in verse 20, the husband of Gerar quarreled with the husband of Isaac, saying, the water is ours. So he named the well Esek. So that's a wordplay, because they contended with him. And then they dug another well and they quarreled over it too, and he named it Sitnah. Now the word Sitnah is actually Satan, the adversary. I just thought that's interesting. And then he moved it away and dug another well, and it was called Rehovot, and that's a city near Tel Aviv in Israel. But eventually the Lord made room for them and made them fruitful. And then the Lord appeared to Isaac again, saying, I am the God of your father Abraham. Do not fear, for I am with you. I will bless you and multiply your descendants for the sake of my servant Abraham. And see, this is the pattern here. When the Lord speaks a promise to you, that promise gets challenged. You're going to face the enemy. You're going to face jealousy. You're going to face fear. But the Lord is always with you. Because Isaac was weak. He didn't actually walk out his calling perfectly, but the Lord was with him. And then Avimelech came and made this covenant, this oath with Isaac. So they made peace. And now back to Esau. Verse 34. Esau was 40 years old. He married Judith, the daughter of Beeri the Hittite, and Basemath. And it says in verse 35, and they brought grief to Isaac and Rebekah. So what we can see about Esau is that he didn't honor his father. He didn't really care about anything of God. And then in chapter 27, Isaac is getting old, and he wanted to bless Esau. And it says in verse 2, Isaac said, behold, now I am old, and I do not know the day of my death. Now then, please take your gear, your quiver, and your bow, and go out to the field and hunt game for me, and prepare a savory dish for me, such as I love, and bring it to me that I may eat, so that my soul may bless you before I die. Now I wonder, this is just a thought, why does Isaac need a bowl of stew or food to bless Esau, right? I think it's because this is the only thing that he liked about Esau. This is the reason he liked Esau in the first place. But other than that, Esau has been a pain, really, for both him and Rebekah. So he's probably thinking, if I can just eat the food, then I can sort of tap into the reason why I enjoyed Esau in the first place, so that I'm actually able to bless him. Maybe. Just a thought. Now, obviously, Rebekah heard it, and then she told Jacob to disguise himself as Esau in order to get the blessing from Isaac. She says, bring me 2 goats. I'm going to cook something, and you're going to pretend to be Esau, pretend to be your brother, and bring the dish to your father and get the blessing. But you can see here, Jacob actually didn't want to do it, because in verse 11 says, Jacob answered his mother Rebekah, behold, Esau my brother is a hairy man, and I am a smooth man. Perhaps my father will fail me, then I will be a deceiver in his sight. And by the way, the Hebrew word for deceiver here has nothing to do with the word Jacob. It says, then I will be a deceiver in his sight, and I will bring upon myself a curse and not a blessing. So he didn't actually want to do it. It's not his nature to do it. And then his mother Rebecca said, well, if you do get cursed, may the curse be on me. Only obey my voice and go and get them for me. Now, I don't believe Rebecca was a deceiver either. She knew what the Lord had promised. She knew what the Lord had said about Jacob. And she knew what her other son Esau was like. And she couldn't stand to see Esau taking the blessing without the birthright. She saw that as an injustice, really. Now, was the way she did it right? Probably not. Was it a deceitful act? Yes. And we're going to see in later portions that God actually deals with Jacob in his deceit. But this is not a matter of God wanted Esau to have the birthright and the blessing, but Jacob stole it from him and now God changed his mind. That's not what happens here. Jacob and Rebekah's hearts were always for the Lord. They were just weak and imperfect people. And God had determined Jacob to have the birthright and the blessing as well since the beginning. So Rebekah cooked the food and gave it to Jacob, and Jacob brought it to Isaac. Isaac said, that was quick. And Jacob said, praise the Lord, he helped me. And then Isaac blessed Jacob. And this is what he said in verse 28. Now may God give you the dew of heaven and of the fatness of the earth and an abundance of grain and new wine. May people serve you and nations bow down to you. Be master of your brothers, and may your mother's sons bow down to you. Cursed be those who curse you, and blessed be those who bless you. Now this is serious. This is a serious blessing, because this cursed be those who curse you and blessed be those who bless you is the same promise God gave to Abraham concerning this nation that's coming forth from him that would eventually become Israel, from whom comes the Messiah who will crush the head of the serpent and bring justice to the earth. Jacob is supposed to have that. Isaac, in his own mind, gave that to Esau. Can you imagine if Esau got this blessing, but he didn't care about the birthright? He didn't care about the things that are holy. He only cared about his fleshly desire, instant, immediate gratification. That would have been bad, right? So the Lord saw all that from the beginning and determined that Jacob would have this. It's not the perfect way to get it, but it was God's will all along. And then Esau comes back from hunting and cooked the food and brought it to Isaac. And Isaac said, who are you? And he said, I'm your son, your firstborn Esau. And then Isaac got nervous and said, well, who did I bless just now then? And then they both realized that Jacob had done this. He took the blessing from Esau. Now look at Esau's response here in verse 34. When Esau heard the words of his father, he cried with an exceedingly great and bitter cry and said to his father, bless me, even me also, O my father. And then verse 36. And then he said, is he not rightly named Jacob? For he has supplanted me or deceived me. Some translations say supplanted me these 2 times. He took away my birthright, and behold, now he has taken away my blessing. Now, we know that's not true, right? Because yes, it is a legitimate wordplay. Let's actually have a look at this, verse 36. Vayomer achi kara shmo Yaakov, vayakveni ze bechorati lakach. So yes, it's a legitimate wordplay, but we know that that's not the reason the father named him Jacob. It's not because he's a deceiver. It's because he grabbed Esau by the heel. But not only that, we also know that Jacob did not take away his birthright. Esau willingly sold it for a bowl of stew. And yes, he was being deceitful on the blessing part, but Esau didn't really care about the birthright. He cared about the blessing. He wanted the blessing without the responsibility of the firstborn. So what Esau is doing here is actually being the accuser of the brethren. That's what he's doing. And I think at this point, Isaac finally woke up to what his firstborn son Esau was really like. And Esau said to the father, "Have you not reserved even one blessing for me? Bless me also." And he wept. And then Isaac prophesied over Esau. And he says, verse 39, "Behold, away from the fertility of the earth shall be your dwelling, and away from the dew of heaven from above." Now, some translations say, "Of the fertility of the earth shall be your dwelling, and of the dew of heaven from above." So the NASB here actually suggests that it's a curse, but the other translation sounds like it's a blessing. The Hebrew can actually be translated either way, so it's not very clear here. But verse 40, "By your sword you shall live, and your brother you shall serve. But it shall come about when you become restless that you will break his yoke from your neck." There's no more blessing for him. The blessing belongs to Jacob because Esau sold his birthright for a bowl of stew. And Esau was bitter. Why was he bitter? Because he lost his blessing. Not because he lost his birthright. And he plots to kill Jacob. And then Rebekah heard about it and sent his son Jacob away to his brother. And she figured out a way for Isaac to approve of this plan. She complained about the two wives of Esau. She said, "I don't want more daughters-in-law from this land." So Isaac then blessed Jacob on his journey. He never annulled the blessings that he released on Jacob. Never did. And I think after everything, Isaac probably saw that Jacob always desired the things of the Lord. He cared about that which is holy. He honored deep down Isaac and Abraham. He cared about the covenant. He always desired the father's blessing. And I think Isaac finally realized that in the end. And Jacob did deceive, but he was not a deceiver. That's the accuser of the brethren. And yes, the Lord will deal with Jacob's deceit, which we're going to read about in the next portion and the portion after that. So if you enjoyed this episode, guys, be sure to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and all major platforms. Visit our website, ministry website, Till Zion Sings, and connect with us on Instagram and YouTube at Till Zion Sings. Have a great weekend, everyone, and Shabbat Shalom. Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode. For more information on Till Zion Sings Ministries and our mission, visit our website www.tillzionsings.com. For daily content, follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube at Till Zion Sings. And lastly, for exclusive bonus content, become a supporting member of the show at patreon.com/tillzionsings.